Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Eruvin Pevav. We are on Pehei Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. It says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Im Yesham Tfisas Yad V'chulu. Rabbi Yehuda told us in the Mishnah that if the landlord still has some of his possessions in the tenant's apartment, then it's considered to be Tfisas Yad. He's still holding on to that property, and it's considered to be part of his residence, the landlord's that is, and therefore the person who lives in that apartment doesn't have to contribute to the Erev Chatzeres. He's not considered to be an independent resident. So that's called Tfisas Yad. It says more, Heichi Yidom Tfisas Yad. What is an example of this Tfisas Yad? It says more, Kigun Chatzeres Shel Ben Bunyas. For instance, this courtyard that belonged to this wealthy fellow Ben Bunyas. Let's take a look at Rashi inside. 2 lines from the bottom, towards the end of that second line. Ben Bunyas, says Rashi, Asher Hava, he was a wealthy fellow, a wealthy landowner. Umashal Batim Shebachatzer Lacherim, he would loan or lease the homes within his courtyard to others. V'hoyloi Kalim B'kulan. But he had his kalim, his merchandise, sitting throughout the properties. Shemteich Oishroi, Hoyloi Kalim Harbe. Due to his wealth, he had an abundance of kalim, which were stored throughout all his properties. So since he had his kalim within the homes of his tenants, that's considered to be Tfisas Yad. He's still holding on to those properties, and he hadn't fully relinquished the dira in those places, and therefore the person who lives there doesn't have to contribute to the Erev Chatzeres as long as the Bunyas himself contributed. So there's no need for the current resident to be reckoned as part of the Erev Chatzeres, because it's considered like the landlord still is holding on to his property. Continues the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. What's the story? Ben Bunyas, this fellow Ben Bunyas, the son of Bunyas, also came the Rebbe, he approached Rebbe. Amar lahu, so Rebbe turned to the Talmudim there and he said, Panu Makaim leben meyamana. Clear, nice, respectable place to seat this fellow, this wealthy fellow, this Ben meyamana, the one who is worth 100 mana. Also in Shachrina, then another fellow came along. And this time Rebbe turned to the people around him and he said, this fellow deserves more respect. Amar lahu, Panu Makaim ben Masayim mana. Clear, an even more respectable place for this fellow who is a Ben Masayim mana, one who's worth 200 mana. So he respected the second fellow more than Ben Bunyas. Amar lafanav, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yesi. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yesi turned to Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, it should be just the opposite. The first fellow comes from a more wealthy family. Aviv Shalzeh Yeshloi Elev Sfinas Bayam. The father of Ben Bunyas, meaning Bunyas himself, he's a very wealthy fellow. He owns 1,000 ships at sea who connect in the Elef Ayoros Bayabasha, and corresponding to that, 1,000 cities on land. This is just a way of describing his immense wealth. So you should be giving him more respect than the other fellow. Amar Lei, so Rebbe said, look, it's because he came dressed in just plain clothing. He didn't appear to be overly wealthy. So therefore Rebbe tells Rabbi Yesi, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yesi, you know what? When next time you approach his father, Emerla, you should tell him, meaning Mr. Bunyas, you should tell him, Al teshagreyu bekelim halolu. When you send your son, Ben Bunyas, to me, don't send him with these ordinary looking clothing. Lifnei Rebbe mechabed ashirim, before Rebbe who accords honor to wealthy people. Make sure that he looks respectful so that he gets the proper honor. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva as well was mechabed ashirim. He would accord honor to wealthy people. Why is that? Because the Darash Rabbi Bar Mari, in accordance with the drasha of Rabbi Bar Mari, Pasuk says, Yeshiv oilam lefnei Elokim, chesed ve'emes man yitzuru. What does this mean? When is the world properly established and running properly before Hashem? When there's chesed, there's emes, there's sharing, there's stucca going on. Bizman chesed ve'emes. So when the wealthy people do chesed emes to people who are less fortunate than them, man, Rashi says it's lashon of mezainis, of sustenance. When the wealthy people supply, support, sustain the poor people, yinseru, they will safeguard and secure the world. So Hashem allotted to everybody his respective portion within the world's resources, and he gave a larger portion, relatively larger portion to the Ashirim, in order so that they supply the other people with what they need. That gets the world going, that keeps the world in place. The chesed activities, the stach activities going on throughout the world, olam chesed yibana, and that's the reason why Rebbe and Rabbi Kiva were machabed Ashirim, who were endowed by Hashem with this ability, with this schus, opportunity to supply the less fortunate people with their sustenance. So they take part in the creation, the sustenance, the development and existence of the world. Says the Gemara, okay, getting back to the question of what is Tfisas Yad, which the Gemara described as the fellow Ben Bunyas, who used to have his belongings strewn throughout all his properties. The Gemara gives us another guideline. Rabba bar Rabba Chana Amar, Kikon Yosef Shemachreisha. You don't need to have lots of your belongings inside the apartments. Even just one thing, like a yosed, this rod of the machresha, of the plow, that's enough. Even if the owner only has that inside this apartment which is leased, that too is considered to be tfisas yad, which will allow the tenant to avoid the need to join the Erev Chatzeres. Amar Rav Nachman, actually we have a brisa, Tana Devei Shmuel. So Devei Shmuel had a brisa which presented the guideline as follows. Davar hanitel b'Shabbos oiser. If the item which is contained within the tenant's apartment is something which is not muktzah, it's nital b'Shabbos. So theoretically the renter could just toss it out during Shabbos. That's not something which will necessarily remain there throughout Shabbos. Oiser, then we can reckon with that. And the person who lives there needs to join the Erev, otherwise he's Oyser. But if it's something which is Muktzah, which presumably will stay there throughout Shabbos, Davar she'eini nitel Shabbos, then Eini Oyser, the tenant, does not have to contribute to the Erev. That's considered to be a proper Tfisas Yad. So this is something which will endure, which will sustain itself throughout Shabbos. Something which is Muktzah, which is presumed to be remaining there throughout Shabbos. We found likewise in the Brisa, Yeshle Tevel, Yeshle Ashashis. These are examples of Muktzah, things which are inherently Muktzah. Tevel, which is Muktzah. Ashashis, these large pieces of metal. So if the landlord has these items, Tevel or Ashashis, inside the apartment, anything else which can't be moved on Shabbos, Eino Oyser, then that's considered to be a proper Tfisas Yad, to which which causes the tenant to which doesn't due to that, the tenant doesn't have to go ahead and join the Erev Chatzeres. So in summary, if the owner has Tfisas Yad, then the person who lives there doesn't have to join the Erev. The Gemara began by describing the properties of Bunyas, of Ben Bunyas, and due to his wealth, he had lots of stuff sitting around all his apartments. The Gemara tells us the name of Rabba Bar Chana. That's not really necessary as long as there's just one thing. Then the Gemara concludes, provided that it's something which is Muktzah, which is guaranteed to stay there throughout Shabbos, that's considered to be a proper hold on the property. It's considered to still be serving the landlord to some extent, and therefore the tenant doesn't really have to consider himself as an independent entity, independent dweller in the Chatzer. He does not have to go ahead and join the Erev Chatzeres. Says the Mishnah, "Hamaniach es beisoi v'halach lishvayz v'acheres." If a person leaves home, started to spend Shabbos in another city, echad nachri v'echad Yisrael, whether this fellow is a Goy or Yisrael, hariz ha'oisa, he still has to go ahead and contribute to the Erev in his place of residence. Why? Says Rashi, because according to Rav Meir, dira b'loy ba'alim shma dira, a place of residence without the presence of the resident is still called a dira, and the owner of that Makom Dira has to contribute to the Erev. So even in absence of the person, you still have to reckon with the fact that he has a dwelling in this Chatzar. Rabbi Yehuda, the fact that he's not here doesn't require him to go ahead and join the Erev, because Lo Shma Dira, a place of residence without a person, is not reckoned with. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Nachri Oyser Yisrael Ein Oyser. Rabbi Yossi agrees to Rabbi Yehuda that an absence of an owner, there's no need to join. However, he says if it's a guy who left town, then he still has to join. When it comes to Yisrael, any Oyser doesn't have to join. Why? It's not customary for the Yisrael to resurface on Shabbos. So when he left for Shabbos, we assume that it's going to remain in that state throughout Shabbos. And since there's no Bailam here, there's no need to join. However, by a Nachri, although currently he's not here, perhaps he's going to resurface on Shabbos. So based on that concern, we say that he's still Oyser. Rabbi Shimon Omer, he says like this. Up until now we spoke about the fellow went to spend Shabbos in a different city. Rabbi Shimon comes to add another element. Afilu heneach beisoy v'halach lishbeis etzal bitay ba'isayir. Even if the person left home and decided to spend Shabbos by his daughter's place within that same city, that's also fine. Ein Oyser. He no longer is Oyser. So even if he's still in the same city, since he left his home, shekvar hisiya miliboy, he's already decided to leave his home on Shabbos. He's removed he detached himself, his mind and his heart from his home. He doesn't plan on coming back. So, therefore, he's not considered to be a dweller of this chatzar for the Shabbos, and he doesn't have to go and contribute to the Eruv chatzirs. Says the Gemara Amarab, halach Reb Shimon. The halach is like Reb Shimon, that even if a person left his home and is spending Shabbos by his daughter in that same city, he no longer is considered to be a dweller of the Chatzar, does not have to contribute to the Eruv. V'dafka bita. But that's only if he's spending Shabbos with his daughter and son-in-law, where we can assume things will go well, and he'll end up staying there throughout Shabbos. But if he spends Shabbos by his son and his daughter-in-law, we don't apply this formula. Why? Perhaps things won't work out with his daughter-in-law, and he'll end up coming back home for Shabbos. The Am Inshi, as is a common saying, Navach bach kalba. If you approach a home and a male dog barks at you, oh, don't worry about it. Go in. You'll work things out with him. But if a female dog barks at you, then there's reason for concern. Pike, leave the house, leave at once. So when he goes to spend Shabbos with his daughter, there's no concern about the son-in-law. He's a zachar, a male, he'll work it out. But in the reverse, not necessarily will things work out. If he goes to spend Shabbos by his son, with his daughter-in-law, perhaps things will get messy there, won't work out, and he'll have to come back for Shabbos. So in that case, we can't assume that he's not going to resurface throughout Shabbos, and we have to be concerned he has to go ahead and join the Eruv. So in summary, if a person leaves home for Shabbos, and we are left with his dira, his place of dwelling, but there's no bailam here, according to our mayor, don't worry about it. Just the opposite. According to our mayor, dira b'loi bailam is shma dira. He has to go ahead and contribute to the Eruv. According to Rabbi Yehuda, don't worry about it, because lo shma dira. Rabbi Yehuda holds in concept lo shma dira. That's only by a guy. However, that's only by a Yisrael who won't surface on Shabbos. But by a guy, there's always a chance that he's going to resurface on Shabbos. Rav Shimon comes to add that, yeah, dira b'loi bailam lo shma dira, but I want to add, not only if it's in a different city, even if you want to spend Shabbos in that same city, we don't have to reckon with him. That's only provided he went to his daughter, where we can safely assume things will work out, and he'll end up staying there throughout Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah. If we have two courtyards lined up side by side, with a wall running along the boundary between the chatzeres, and there's actually a bur filled with water right at the boundary, right under that wall. So half the bur is in this chatzar, half in the other chatzar. Says the Mishnah, Ein memalin memena b'Shabbos. None of the fellows of the chatzeres can use that bar on Shabbos. Elam kein osalem mechitza gavay asar tfachim, unless they construct a mechitza 10 tfachim high, specifically in order to split this bar into two, to allow each one to draw from his side of the bar. What's wrong with drawing water from a joint bar? So although generally we learned that something which was in the chatzar during the hashmashas can be transferred from chatzar to chatzar without an eruv, the Farshim speak out that apparently we're speaking about taking the water from this joint area into the person's home. That you can't do without an eruv chatzeres. So the Mishnah tells us the only way you can do that is if he splits the water into two, creates two separate drawing areas. And that's what the mechitza does. Now, it's pretty clear that although there's a wall running on top of the bar, right, separating the two chatzeros, that won't affect things, that won't help things. Because you need to have a mechitza constructed specifically for this purpose. The mere fact that the bar is dissected with this mechitza running over it, that doesn't supply the goods. That doesn't create that indicator, that separation within the bar. Rather, you need to make a separate mechitza, asarat tfachim, in order to separate the bar into two distinct drawing areas, which will allow the respective chatzeros to draw from their side. So you need to make a mechitza gvar asarat tfachim, says the Mishnah, where exactly is this mechitza going to be positioned? Whether down on bottom, whether somewhere higher up in the bar, as long as it's within its rim, meaning within the space, the confines of the bar itself, not on top of it. The Gemara later will explain the exact meaning of malamata, what this thing means. He says actually the placement of the mechitza is subject to a machlekes between Misham and Beis Hillel. Oimrim malamata. The mechitza specifically needs to be malamata, down and bottom. Beis Hillel oimrim malamala. It could even be on the top portion of the bar, which the Gemara will describe in great detail. So this is the shita of Tanakama, of Shimon Gamliel, that a new mechitza needs to be constructed specifically to allow drawing from the bar. Rabbi Yehuda, that's not necessary. Let's remember there's a wall running above that bar, along the boundary between two chatzeros. That's enough. According to Rabbi Yehuda, although the mechitza is not reaching the water, but let's apply the halacha l'mashemesina of good aches mechitzasa. Let's cut and bring down the mechitza. When something is separating two areas, we view it as though it's separating the entire area all the way down to the bottom. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, there's no need to construct a new mechitza for the sake of the bar. Rabbi Yehuda leitei mechitza gedola, the mechitza which you're going to construct in the bar, why would it be superior than that wall which is running between the chatzeris and over the bar? That's enough to separate the bar into two and allows them to draw from their respective sides. So the Mishnah spoke about the mechitza needs to be constructed for the bar, either milamala or milamata. According to Rav Shimon Gamliel, we have machlekes. B'Shamai requires specifically milamata, down or bottom. But still say it's sufficient if it's milamala, but it has to be within the confines of the bar. What exactly does lamata or lamala mean? We have actually two approaches. We have Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. Rav Huna, lamata, when Beis Shammai required the mechitza to be lamata, what does it mean? Lamata mamish, literally on the bottom portion of the bar, meaning not within the water, not below water surface, rather next to the water, above, hovering above the water surface. So we have the bar with the water on bottom, and we have the top portion, the empty portion of the bar. So according to Beis Shammai, the mechitza needs to be lamata, right above the water, not on the higher portion of the bar. It needs to be close down to the water level to create that separating indicator for the water itself. So that's Shitas Beis Shammai. Lamata mamish. When Beis Hillel say it could even be higher up, lamala, it means lamala mamish. It means literally lamala v'zev bar. But both lamala lamata are in reference to within the bar itself. So according to Beis Shammai, if you have the bar and the bottom portion of the bar contains the water, lamata means the mechitza is going to be hovering right near the surface of the water, right above the water. According to Beis Hillel, it could be further up, lamala mamish, on the top portion of the bar, but certainly it needs to be within the confines of the bar itself. Only then does it provide the heker, the indicator which separates the bar into two distinct drawing areas. So according to both shittas, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, there's no need to have the mechitza actually inserted into the water itself. So that's Rav Huna's shita. For Rabbi Yehuda Amar, he has a different approach. He says, lamata, when Beis Shammai speak about the mechitza being down on the bottom, lamata min hamayim, below water level. It has to be down on the bottom, surface of the bur and rise 10 tefachim from the bottom of the bur itself. So according to him, the mechitza has to go ahead and separate the actual water itself to allow drawing. Lamata min hamayim. Lamala. When we still say, well, it's not necessary, it's enough that it's higher up. What do they mean? Lamala min hamayim. Right above the water. So according to Beishamai, it needs to be on the bottom of the bur, down on the floor of the bur, rising 10 tefachim. According to Beisil, that's not necessary, as long as it's sitting within the bur, but right above the water. That's okay. So we really have three possible placement options for this mechitza. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that we just mentioned, Beishamai require lamata bebur, all the way on bottom, lamata min hamayim, all the way on bottom, sitting on the bottom surface of the bur, rising 10 tefachim. According to Beis Hillel, it doesn't have to be within the water, as long as it's sitting right on top of the water. That's called lamala, but it has to be close to the water. And we had Rav Huna, who said that according to Beis Shammai, it needs to be right above the water. So he calls this lamata, right? And then according to Beis Hillel, it can be even further higher up, within the bur, but in the upper portion of the bur, not right near the water. So it's either down on the ground below, right above the water, or all the way on top of the bur, within the area confines of the bur. So more now we'll analyze Rabbi Yehuda's shita. Right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, Beishamai require lamata all the way on the floor of the bur, rising 10 tefachim. We're assuming it only rises 10 tefachim. And according to Beis Hillel, it needs to be right above the water level. Amalei Rabba Barav Chanan Labai. So Rabbi Barav Chanan asked Abai as follows: Ha da'amar Rabbi Yehuda lamata min hamayim. How do we understand Rabbi Yehuda, who says that according to Beis Shammai, it needs to be, it's not enough for it to be right on top of water surface, right on top of water level. It has to be down on the ground below. Maishna lamata mamish deloi. What's wrong with lamata mamish? Meaning, if the mechitza is hovering right on top, right near the top surface of the water, what's wrong with that? Why wasn't that enough? Why does it have to be all the way down on the ground below? Maishna lamata mamish deloi. What's wrong with that? We're assuming it's because since you haven't created a mechitza within the water itself, the water is getting mixed up. The water from both sides of the bur are mixing with each other. So that doesn't allow them to draw because everything's getting mixed up. It's as though you're drawing from the other side. Since the waters from both sides get mixed up with each other. So if that's how we understand why the mechitza sitting on top of the water, not actually separating the water itself, is not enough, then what do you gain by placing the mechitza on the ground, on the bottom surface of the bur? Since it only rises 10 tefachim, what happens above 10 tefachim? The water is mixing up. Lamata min hamayim nami. Even if you place the water, the mechitza, down below the water, meaning on the ground, the bottom surface of the bur, there as well. Lamata min hamayim nami hari v'maya. What happens to the water right above the 10 tefach mechitza? Fine, so you have the bur, you have the water on bottom, and the mechitza all the way stuck to the floor of the bur, but only rises 10 tefachim. What happens to the water above that 10 tefachim? It's mixing up. So what do you accomplish? Amalei Sabai responded, Lo yishmielach. Did you not hear Hadam Rabbi Yehuda Marav? Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav. Umatuba. Some say Mishum Rav Chia, that it was the name of Rav Chia. Sorech Shiro Roishen Shalkanim Lamala min hamayim tefach. When he said that the mechitza is placed on the ground of the bur, he didn't mean that it's enough for it to rise 10 tefachim. You're right. That wouldn't really accomplish much. We need that the roishan shalkanim should be visible. The tips of the reeds, meaning the reeds that comprise this mechitza, the tips of the reeds, the top portion of the mechitza, need to be visible, need to protrude a tefach out above the water, above the surface of the water. So certainly, yeah, you have to go ahead and separate, you have to go ahead and make a hefsek throughout the entire water. starting from the ground below all the way past and above the water level, a tefach above the water. So that explains things. And this accomplishes a true hefsek, a true mechitza, throughout the whole water. So that explained this aspect of Rabbi Yehuda's shita. That according to Beis Shammai, lamata min hamayim means the mechitza is going to be placed on the ground below, on the bottom surface of that bar. It's going to rise up, past the water level, a tefach above the water. This creates a proper separation within the water itself. Says Vesu, another question he asked him. Ha'adam Rabbi Yehuda, lamala min hamayim. When Rabbi Yehuda told us that according to Beis Shammai, there's no need for the mechitza to be firmly planted on the ground of the bar. Rather, it's lamala min hamayim. As long as it's hovering right above the water, close to the water surface, that's enough. Enough to create that separation. It's enough that it relates to the water, it's close to the water, that's fine. Now, why do Beis Hillel insist that it be close to the water? Maishna lamala mamish deloy. What's wrong with placing the mechitza lamala mamish, meaning at the upper portion of the bar, away from the water? Right? So we have the bar, the water, and according to Rabbi Yehuda's approach in Beis Hillel, when they said lamala, means as opposed to Beis Shammai, who required down under the water, mechitza could be right above the water level. But it can't be higher up. It can't be in the upper portion of that bar. Even if it's within the confines of the bar, that's not enough. It needs to be right next to the water level. What's the difference? Either way, you're not affecting the water itself. The mechitza is not being inserted in the water. So what difference does it make if it's near the water or farther away from the water? As long as it's within the bar, that should be enough. What's wrong with placing the mechitza further up in the bar? That doesn't work there. Why? Because it doesn't relate to the water, and the water gets mixed up. If that's the case, even when you place the mechitza lower down, right above the water surface, water is still getting mixed up. So what's the advantage to placing the mechitza close to the water versus further from the water? Amalei, so once again Abai responded, Lo yishmielach. Did you not hear how the Tana Yaakov Kachina? What Yaakov Kachina taught? Tzorech sheyishka rashi kanim b'mayim tefach. That when he places the mechitza right above the water, what he meant to say is that some of the mechitza, the rashi kanim, the tips of the reeds be used as mechitza, meaning the bottom portion of that mechitza needs to be inserted somewhat into the water itself. At least a tefach. So that explains things. That's why it's advantageous to put the mechitza there, because it's actually creating that hefsek within the water itself. Let's see Rashi. Immediately to the right, Rashi begins with the words Shishka Rashi Konim. Hatachtoinim. So the bottom tip of the reeds have to be inserted into the water. At least the tefach. That's according to Beis Hillel. And this is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai bo mechitza mafsekes alatoin. They need the mechitza to go dissect all the way down to the very bottom of the bar. As we mentioned earlier, they need a proper hefsek throughout the entire water. Beis Hillel bo hekem mechitza. According to Beis Hillel, it's enough to have some sort of indication of a mechitza. So as long as it dips a bit into the water, that's enough. So that explains why they insist on having the mechitza near the water, so that it could affect the water itself. It could split the water itself into two, rather than just hanging the mechitza at a distance from the water, which really doesn't relate to the water itself, and therefore it's not sufficient. So just a quick summary. At this point, we have Machais B'Sham Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, the mechitza needs to be lamata. According to Beis Hillel, it's enough that it's lamala. What does lamata mean? According to Rav Huna, nobody requires the mechitza to actually be inserted into the water itself. As long as it's hovering above the water, that's enough. The question is, where are you going to place it? Close to the water, according to Beis Shammai. It needs to be right above the water. According to Beis Hillel, even further up in the bar, it's enough. According to Rabbi Yehuda, all agree that it has to somehow affect the water itself. It has to create a hefsek within the water. The question is, to what extent? According to Beis Shammai, it needs to be lamata. It needs to be firmly planted onto the bottom floor of that bar. rise till past water level, a tefach above the water level, to properly separate the actual water. That allows them to draw from either side. According to Beis Hillel, you don't need to have it to that extent. Yeah, you need to have a hefsek within the water, but somewhat hefsek is enough. As long as the mechitza is hovering above the water and dips a bit into the water, that is sufficient separation. Continues the Gemara. Ve'elaha. How are we going to understand the following statement? The Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Koira arba materes b'chor. So number one, a koira, a beam which is suspended in across a ruins, a churva, a collapsed home, and since the beam is 4 tefach wide, it's a wide beam, 4 tefach from side to side. So as Rashi explains it, the corners on either side are viewed as though they descend downward and create a mechitza. According to Tosfos, it works with the concept of pitikuyot v'soisim, that when you confront a ceiling, right, when you come towards a ceiling, so the flat portion of that ceiling, the vertical angle of that ceiling, it appears like it gives you that sense of separation, like you're entering a new area. So that creates a pesach. We view it as though it descends downwards and creates a pesach. So whether, like Rashi's pshat, that we're taking the corners and pulling it downward like a mechitza, or as Tosfos learns, we apply the concept of pitikuyot v'soisim, that the roof, the ceiling, is viewed as though it creates a pesach, comes down and blocks things off. So either way, we're allowed to carry under this area. Koira arba materes b'churva, it creates a mechitza, and it's mater. So although the mechitza is suspended midair, it's not really reaching the ground below, we view that as a mechitza and allows carrying. Rav Nachman Omar Rabba bar Avoa, and we have another statement for Rav Nachman, name of Rabba bar Avoa. Koira arba materes b'mayim, and this is what pertains to our sugya. Let's say they specifically placed a beam 4 tefach wide over that bar, so it's done specifically to allow the drawing from the bar, to make that heker. So even if the mechitza is not within the bar, it's just leaning over the bar, but since the koira is 4 tefach wide, so as we just explained, it creates the mechitza, which it's a virtual mechitza, as though the mechitza extends downward into the bar and splits the bar into 2, and allows the bnei chatzeros to draw from either side of the koira, which is situated right over the middle of the bar. So koira arba materes b'mayim, and it works in lieu of a mechitza. So the question is, how do we understand this halacha? Yeah, if you create a mechitza within the bar, a literal mechitza, then yeah, each person draws from his side of the mechitza. When you have a virtual mechitza, which is produced by a koira positioned over the bar, how can that allow drawing from the bar? Why? Says the Gemara, Haka'azal dli lidach gisa umaisi. When this fellow sticks his pail into the pit, what happens? The pail will float over to the other side. The other side of this koira. This koira is merely 4 tefach wide, so it's going to perhaps drift to the other side. Umaisi, they're going to fill water and bring it over to his side. Let's see Rashi. Up on top, the top line. So the koira abba is materes b'mayim. Says Rashi, we're speaking about the bar shebesh lechatzeres, unusuna al rochva be'emtza abar l'mal. So this koira is placed on its width, meaning on its wide side, which is 5 tefachim, and that's positioned on the bar to create that mechitza, to separate the 2 portions of the bar. How can they use this mechitza? When he goes ahead and he puts his pail in, then perhaps the pail will float over to the other side, the gisa, on the other side of this beam, on the other side of this virtual mechitza, tachas kol rechav koira, underneath the entire koira, ad chutz lekoira, until the other side of the koira, b'chelik chaveri. So he's going to be drawing from his friend's side of the bar. How can this work? Says the Gemara, on the second line from the top, there's no concern. Why? Kimlu l'Rabbana. The Rabbana working with an assumption, the eined li mahalach yeisim abba tfachim. Generally, a pail doesn't float away 4 tefachim, meaning a person doesn't draw water from such a great distance, perhaps due to inconvenience. So we'll assume that the pail will not drift that far, and he's not going to be drawing from his friend's side of the pit. Says, okay, so he won't get to the other side, but he's going to take water from his side. And there's no real mechitza that is separating the actual water. Right? It's a virtual mechitza due to the kaira suspended above the bar. But let's say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we either maintain that you need to have a literal mechitza within the water itself. Here it's not happening. There's no mechitza, no physical mechitza within the water. So the water is simply getting mixed up. So how can that allow drawing from the side, from even one side of the bar? Because the water is just all in one. It's getting mixed in with each other. Says the Gemara, Tachas kaira mia hariva maya. Underneath this kaira, the water is just getting mixed up. So it's all one in the same water. There's no real hafsek within the water. And that's needed according to Rabbi Yehuda. Says Ella, rather, you're right, we're not following Rabbi Yehuda's shita, who requires an actual mechitza within the water. We're following Rav Huna, who never required an actual mechitza to separate the water itself. Right? Rav Huna told us that the mechitza can be suspended above the water. The difference was that according to Bishama, it needs to be close to the water surface. According to Basil, it could be even further up in the bar, as long as it's in the bar. So we're following that shita. And as long as there's some sort of indicator, some sort of mechitza, which in this case, the kaira, which is hovering above the bar, supplies. Now, as a result of that, they can go and draw. Each person is drawing from his side, and that's okay. It says, Ma'ella mishum de kalu shekilu chacham b'mayim. Chacham apply this leniency when it comes to water usage, that you don't have to have a mechitza within the water itself, as long as it's even a suspended mechitza. We view that mechitza as though it descends downwards. It creates two separate usage areas in the water, and allows them to use their side of the water. K'deboy minei Rabbi Tavla mirav, as we found in the following conversation between Rabbi Tavla, who asked Rav the following question: Mechitza tluya ma'al shetate b'churva. Can a suspended mechitza be matir carrying a churva? Since it's on dry land, does that work there as well? Amalei said no. Ein mechitza tluya materes el b'mayim. A suspended mechitza only works when it comes to water usage. Water is not an area which is walked upon, which is traveled upon, which is heavily used. You don't need the mechitza to actually be planted on the surface of the water itself. You're not really separating mekaymis like on dry land. On dry land, yeah, the mechitza has to go ahead and attach itself firmly to the ground to create a separate makim. Water is not really an area of high usage. It doesn't even have the same type of din of makim. As long as you create some sort of indicator of separateness, even a suspended mechitza will do. We view it as though it descends downwards, creates two separate usage areas in that water, and that's enough. So here as well, when we speak about a bar which requires a mechitza, since it's water usage, as long as there's some sort of mechitza, even a suspended mechitza, is enough to create separate usage areas within that bar and allow the members of the respective chatzeris to draw from their side of the mechitza. Amalei told him, "Ein mechitza tluya materes el b'mayim." A mechitza tluya, a suspended mechitza, only can be applied to water. Kalu shekilu chacham b'mayim. It's a leniency that the chacham applied specifically to water, and as we mentioned, of course, this mechitza, which is going to create two separate usage areas in the water, and allow drawing by the members of the chatzeris, needs to be constructed specifically for the purpose of the water usage. So that's the condition. A suspended mechitza works to create heter for water, provided it was done specifically with that in mind, and then it accomplishes this separation and allows usage of the water area, as opposed to the wall which ran over that bar, the koisel that was between two chaseris, which was not constructed for the sake of separating that water. So even though it's suspended mechitza above water, it won't work, because the point is we're trying to create awareness. There should be a heker. You have to create an indicator of separation here. That only works if you create a mechitza, constructed it specifically for this purpose. Then we say, yeah, even if it's a suspended mechitza, it's going to create two separate usage areas in the water. as opposed to that kaisel which was pre-existing, which wasn't there for the sake of the separation within the bar. According to Tanakama, it won't work. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, yeah. He says, even that kaisel works. You don't need to go ahead and create a new mechitza for the bar itself. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a mechitza tluya works all over, not only by water. It's not a unique kula for water, which would require it to be done specifically for the water, like the Tanakama. He holds that any suspended mechitza works. We view it as though it ascends downwards and creates that separation. So even if it was pre-constructed, it wasn't enough for this purpose. We have that separation in the bar, and that's what Rabbi Yehuda tells us in the Mishnah. Mechitza gedoyla min hakaisel b'neim. The kaisel running over the bar is no worse, perhaps even better, than the proper wall, than the mechitza within the bar. Therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, once you have a kaisel running on the bar, nothing more is required. So in summary, we have a bar situated between two chatzeros. We need to have a mechitza to separate that bar into two distinct usage areas to allow the members of the chatzeros to draw each one from his side. How do we proceed with this mechitza? We have machlekes. According to Beis Shammai, the mechitza has to be positioned lamata. According to Beis Hillel, it's enough that it's lamala. Rav Huna's approach was, they're both referring to within the bar itself, not within the water. It doesn't have to separate the actual water. According to Beis Shammai, it needs to be right near the water, close down to the water. According to Beis Hillel, even if it's lamala, further up, as long as it's within the bar, that's enough. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there needs to be a separation within the water itself. Therefore, he learns that according to Beis Shammai, lamata means all the way down. It has to be constructed on the bottom surface, on the floor of the bar, rising upwards, a tefach past, a tefach higher than the top surface of the water. Whereas according to Beis Hillel, even if it's hovering above the water, as long as it's dipping a bit, a tefach into the water, that's enough to create a separation within the water. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, there's no need to create a new mechitza for the bar. As long as there's a kaisel running over the bar, and it's a mechitza tluya, that's matir. There's no need to create anything else. Continues the Gemara. On Rabbi Yehuda, loitei mechitza, he holds that the mechitza created within the bar is not any better than the kaisel running over it, because he holds that a mechitza tluya is matir even on dry land. So it's not something unique and specific to water. It's not a kula, which would require it to be constructed specifically for this purpose. Right? That's the sheet of the Tanakama. Since it's a special kula for water, then it's only when it's been constructed for this purpose. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a general concept. Any hovering mechitza, any suspended mechitza, is pulled downward. Good aches. Let's cut it and bring it down. Halach Moshe Messinai. And if that's the case, then it's irrelevant what the motive was when creating that mechitza. You have a kaisel, you have a mechitza, which comes down and cuts the water into two. Amar Rab, Bab Rachana, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is b'shitas Rabbi Yossi Amar. It concurs with the shita of Rabbi Yossi, who as well holds of this concept that a mechitza tluya is matir even on dry land. The Amar mechitza tluya materis afil b'yabasha. Where do we find that? The Snan. When it comes to constructing a sukkah. Hameshal dfanais milamad lamata. So he's constructing his walls, the dfanais of the sukkah, starting all the way on top by the schach, and working his way down. And he came up short. He didn't reach the ground below. So what's halach? Bizman shegvois min haaretz gimel tfachim psula. When they run all the way down and come up 3 tefach short. So since we have a gap of 3 tefach from the mechitza to the wall below, that's past the shear of lavud, it's considered to be a gap. It doesn't connect to the ground below, and it's possible. The sukkah is not considered to be an enclosed area. Because according to the shita of the Tanakama, mechitza tluya doesn't work by dry land. It has to connect to the ground below. It has to be planted on the makam to create an enclosure. So if it's less than 3 tefachim, okay, that's lavud, we view it as though it's closed off. But if it's 3 tefachim or more, it's psula. Memata lamala. If he's constructing his mechitzas, starting from the bottom, working his way up, so how high does he have to go? Im gvayis yutfachim kshera. If the walls are 10 tefachim high, which is a shir mechitza, then the sukkah is kosher. In this case, the mechitzas are planted on the ground below. They create a mechitza on the malka. So as long as they're 10 tefachim high, that's a sheer mechitza, that's enough. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Geshem shemalamata lamala asara, just as when you're going from bottom up, how much do you need? Merely 10. Kach malamala lamata asara. Likewise, when you're coming from on top, working your way down, as long as you have 10 tefachim, you're okay. Because even a suspended mechitza, encloses the area. We pull it downward. Because when something separates two areas, the separation affects the entire area, all the way down to the ground. So you've created a proper sukkah, a proper enclosure, and the sukkah is kosher. So it appears that Rabbi Yehuda in our sugi, who allows the wall sitting on top of the bur to be applied down to the bur below, concurs with Rabbi Yossi, who likewise allows these mechitzas, which are suspended in the air, to be considered proper tfanis for the sukkah, as though they're descending downward all the way to the ground below. So it's not necessarily that two things connected. Perhaps loy Rabbi Yehuda, so like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda perhaps doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi by sukkah. V'loy Rabbi Yossi, so like Rabbi Yehuda. Likewise, perhaps Rabbi Yossi by sukkah will not agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda's din by Shabbos. Why? Rabbi Yehuda loy so like Rabbi Yossi. Perhaps Rabbi Yehuda by us will not concur with Rabbi Yossi. Why? Ad kan like Rabbi Yehuda ela b'ruv chatzeres rabbanon. Perhaps it's only over here where Rabbi Yehuda says his din, because we're speaking about it in the rabbanon. The mechitza requirement is only in the rabbanon. We're speaking about reshus hayachid here, chatzer, another chatzer. It's a concern of erev chatzeres. So perhaps the mechitza to address erev chatzeres, which is only the rabbanon, is okay even if it's a suspended mechitza. Ad kan like Omar Rabbi Yehuda. Perhaps Rabbi Yehuda only says this in ela be'ruv chatzeres rabbanon. Abal sukkah da'iraisa loy. Perhaps when it comes to sukkah, which is a din Torah, a mitzvah not Torah, over there we have to be more stringent, and a suspended mechitza perhaps can be applied. Says the Gemara likewise, if loy Rabbi Yossi, so like Rabbi Yehuda. Perhaps Rabbi Yossi by sukkah will not agree with Rabbi Yehuda by Shabbos. Why? Ad kan loy ka'amar Rabbi Yossi. Perhaps Rabbi Yossi only says his halacha ela b'sukkah. Only when it comes to sukkah, the iser eseyu. It's only an iser esei. There's a mitzvah by sukkah's teishvu shivas yamim, and it involves a negation of a mitzvah saseh. So when it comes to fulfilling mitzvah saseh, perhaps we can be more lenient and validate even a suspended mechitz, as opposed to us. Aval Shabbos, this is skilu, lie. But perhaps when it comes to mechitzas on Shabbos, which involve a din Torah iser skila, perhaps over here we can apply a suspended mechitza. As Rashi points out, although we're speaking about merely applying it to a din d'Rabbanan, there's no iser skila involved, it's not a melacha deraisa. But since the mechitza concept when it comes to Shabbos is more chamer, when it comes to the dini Torah on Shabbos is more chamer, it's a skila. So let's assume that the Chachamim, when they required the mechitza, even for the sake of erev chatzeres, required the same type of mechitza, working with the same guidelines, because we know the Chachamim's takana usually mirrors and conforms with the same guidelines of the Dinei Torah. So perhaps, although Rabbi Yossi would allow suspended mechitza by sukkah, which only involves a mitzvah saseh, but perhaps when it comes to Shabbos, which entails mechitza entails malchus deraisa and skila, he wouldn't allow it, even when it comes to just applying it for a rabbinic requirement. So perhaps the two things are unrelated. Rabbi Yehuda spoke specifically by the erev chatzeres, which is rabbanon. Rabbi Yossi spoke specifically about sukkah, which is only a mitzvah saseh. Says the Gemara, if Rabbi Yossi will not hold of Rabbi Yehuda, meaning he can't apply the suspended mechitza when it comes to Shabbos, if that's the case, if so, if you're going to challenge me and say, well, what about that story that took place in Tzipori, which was the locale of Rabbi Yossi, where they used a mechitza tluya for Shabbos, alpi mi nasa, in accordance with whose instructions was that done? Wasn't it done according to Rabbi Yossi? Apparently he holds that even when it comes to Shabbos, you can apply suspended mechitza. No, lie. Alpi Rabbi Yossi, lie alpi Rabbi Yossi. It wasn't done according to Rabbi Yossi's instruct. El alpi Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi nasa. It was actually his son, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, who allowed them to use the mechitza tluya, but perhaps Rabbi Yossi himself would not allow that to be used by Shabbos. What was the incident? The Chi'asar Rav Dimi. Amar, Rav Dimi came, he said as follows. Pamachas, there was once an incident, Shachachu, they forgot Sefer Torah by Jim. They forgot to bring a Sefer Torah to the shul before Shabbos, and was sitting in a chatzah that had no erev. So how did they bring it to the shul? They did as follows. L'machar on Shabbos, parsu sadan al hamudim. They spread these sheets on these posts, creating an alleyway between the home that had the Sefer Torah and the shul. And this passageway was limited, was running from the house to the shul, with no access to it from the other Bnei HaChatzar. So it was strictly limited to this home's use now. And there's no need, if that's the case, there's no need for Erev Chatzeres. And that allowed them to bring the Sefer Torah. They view Sefer Torah, V'Karaboy, and that allowed them to bring the Sefer Torah from the home to the shul and read in the Sefer Torah. So this was the case where they had the sheets, which were actually not reaching the ground, where they were suspended mechitzas, and they were considered to be proper mechitzas. It says, well, 1 second, Pirasu, they actually spread the sheets to create a mechitza on Shabbos itself? The Chatchilu Mishari? Can one initiate a mechitza on Shabbos? That certainly is not allowed. V'ha'akol moedim, all agree, she'ein oisin oila rai b'Shabbos, that one is not allowed to initiate even a temporary mechitza on Shabbos. So although there's machlokes tanaim regarding adding to a temporary mechitza, but all agree you can't initially construct one. So how can they go ahead and create this temporary mechitza on Shabbos itself? Says, well, you're right, they didn't do it on Shabbos. Ella, rather, matzu. Come Shabbos, they encountered these sheets. Matzu, sedin, and prusin al amudim. They found the sheets spread over the posts, which were actually spread before Shabbos. And as a result of that, ve'viu sefer Torah v'karaboy, that allowed them to bring the Sefer Torah to the shul, and they read in the Sefer Torah, and this was done in accordance with the instructions of Rabbi Shmuel. However, Rabbi Yossi himself perhaps would not allow the use of a suspended mechitza tluya, when it comes to halachos of Shabbos. Okay, time for a brief review of today's daf. We learned that if a landowner has tfisas yad, has some of his belongings which are stored within the apartment of his tenant, then the tenant doesn't have to contribute to Erev Chatzeres. We began with the example of this wealthy landowner, Ben Bunyas, who had many of his possessions stored throughout his properties. The Gemara concluded, actually, we don't need to have too many possessions, even one, like a rod of the machresha. The Gemara concluded, provided that it's muktzah, where we're certain it's going to remain there throughout Shabbos, and that's considered to be proper tfisas yad, where the tenant doesn't have to contribute to the Erev. Now, what if a person leaves home for Shabbos, and he leaves behind his dira, but it has no balim, there's no dweller there? Does he have to contribute to the Erev? Do we say dira b'lei balim is shma dira? It's still considered to be a proper dwelling or not? According to our mayor, it is a dira. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it is not. According to Rabbi Yossi, it is not. Provided it's a Yisrael where we're pretty sure he's not going to resurface on Shabbos itself. Rabbi Shimon adds, even if he went to spend Shabbos in the same city, provided it's by his daughter and son-in-law, where we're certain that things will work out, and he's going to remain there throughout Shabbos, and not return home. In this case, he doesn't have to contribute to the Erev. We proceeded with the case of a bar situated between two chatzeres, where they're required to make a mechitza for that bar, to split it into two, to create two separate drawing areas. According to Beis Shammai, you put the mechitza lamata. According to Beis Hillel, lamala is okay. Rav Huna explains it as follows. Both agree you don't have to have the mechitza inserted in the water. Beis Shammai say it has to be close to the water. According to Beis Hillel, even if it's not near the surface of the water, even if it's up above, but it's within the bar, that's sufficient. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to go ahead and make a hefsek in the water itself. Beis Shammai require lamata, all the way down on the bottom of the bar. Has to be planted on the bottom ground of the bar, rise up until a tefach past the surface of the water. According to Beis Hillel, it could be hovering above the water as long as it dips a tefach into the water. Now this mechitza was specifically constructed for this bar, because it's a mechitza tluya, it's a hovering mechitza. The Chacham applied a leniency, reviewed as though it goes down and separates the water into two, creates two separate usage areas, provided it was done specifically, it was constructed specifically to create this indicator. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, even a ordinary hovering mechitza, even above dry land, is viewed as though it descends downward. Therefore he says, You don't have to create a separate mechitza for this bar. Even the kaisel, which is already running over the bar to separate the chatzeres, that's enough. That's a mechitza tli, which is mater, which creates that separation within the bar as well. The Gemara told us that Rabbi Yossi as well holds that a mechitza tli works by sukkah, but not necessarily would he agree to apply it by Shabbos, where perhaps you need to be more stringent. Likewise, Rabbi Yehuda, although he allows this by Erev Chatzeres, which is merely Drabanan, perhaps he wouldn't allow it by sukkah, which involves a din Torah.